song?
He can't dance. He bruised my feet several times, and I gave up.
Just as Santa Claus owns Christmas, Guy Lombardo owned New Year's.
I'm Anne-Marie MacDonald. I remember babysitting as a teenager on New Year's Eve, ringing in the year with Guy Lombardo on TV. I had no idea that Lombardo was bigger than the Stones, that the man who played the sweetest music this side of heaven was the longest-running dance band gig in history. From London, Ontario, into the living rooms and onto the bandstands of North America, this local boy made more than good. I have to say, tonight's show really is one of the sweetest. The story of a band leader who listened even more to his fans than they did to him.
To me, it's a beautiful life I've had, and I enjoy it because, after all, we only see people when they're out having a good time, and that makes me happy. Ours is a happy, happy way of making a living.
A man can do a lot of good things in his life and still be forgotten, and it's always a shame. But this man didn't do what he did to be remembered. He just wanted to play music that people could dance to. Guy Lombardo led a hugely successful orchestra from 1918 to 1977. Not many people are dancing to his kind of music anymore, but when they did, his Royal Canadians were as big as it gets. Working right alongside his family, this man from London, Ontario, sold over 100 million records and played at the inaugurations of 7 American presidents. His is not a story you can tell in a straight line. Too much happened over too long a time for that. But it is a story that should be told, because in the end, we remember Guy Lombardo, if at all now, for a song about remembering.
Well, sir, the music you hear is just about that of one of the best-known orchestras in the whole world. Here's the man that leads that orchestra, Guy Lombardo.
There are very few band leaders, very few even individual musicians or vocalists, who have maintained popularity anywhere nearly as long.
They were young men once, Guy Lombardo and his teenage brothers, Carmen and Liebert, and the lure of the big American dance halls to the south was irresistible. Guy was the oldest, and since they listened to him anyway, they made him the boss. Carmen played saxophone, wrote songs and sang, and Liebert taught himself the trumpet. It was the jazz age, but Guy Lombardo wasn't playing jazz. He was playing what used to be called sweet music, and that was a style that was meant to be danced to. Dancing was something that everybody could afford to do, and even if you couldn't dance to any other kind of music, Guy Lombardo made sure you could dance to his.
He had this unique style of playing a slow tempo, basically a 2-beat tempo, and playing quietly, which was the antithesis of what everybody else was doing at the time. They were playing loud and hot. And Lombardo played quietly, and one of the reasons he did that was because he thought it was important, as a dancer himself, to be able to talk to the girl you were dancing with.
Guy Lombardo was always playing chiefly for the dancing crowd, which is nice, because that probably covered about 80% of the American people. Everybody likes to dance, whether you're, in the South or the big cities or the country and far west, wherever you are. Dancing will always be popular. It's a universal art.
Guy Lombardo was once so popular that the band he called the Royal Canadians were making $4,000 a week, at a time when a company manager might make half of that in a year. But for that kind of success, you need a little publicity to go along with your talent. Guy Lombardo guessed that the growing technology of radio was the way to get it, and he guessed right.
You think of it, 1923, we're just out of crystal sets and headphones, and this is a man who's smart enough to realize that if you're going to be famous, radio is what's going to make you famous. He played free, whereas a lot of band leaders would never have done that. They would never have played free. Lombardo did, and I guess was smarter than any of them for doing it.
And he was smart enough to get himself to Chicago. It was the musical heart of America then. And that's where Guy Lombardo was when everything just came together for him. Prohibition was in effect. Gangsters controlled much of the city, including the nightclubs. The money was good, but the competition was fierce. Jazz giant Louis Armstrong was there, as were future swing greats like Benny Goodman and Glenn Miller. Carmen Lombardo was writing songs, and Guy Lombardo was making sure they stuck with the style his audiences seemed to like. And then suddenly, overnight, everybody in the country was dancing to them.
And the 15th of November, they put the wire in. We were on the radio at 9 o'clock. They had all the waiters standing around the mics and the cooks. There weren't too many waiters or cooks. I said, now from the Granada Cafe, Guy Lombardo and his orchestra. And we had these fellas applaud. And we did the first number. And before the 15 minutes was up, Lester Atlas, who owned the station, WBBM, called on the other phone and said, tell them to play all night. Keep on playing. Oh, we were delighted. By midnight, the place was full of people.
Every hug seems to act just like a drug. You're getting to be a habit with me. Let me stay in your arms. I'm addicted to your charms. You're getting to be a habit with me.
The Lombardo craze swept the country, and band leaders scrambled to imitate his sound. If you had a dance band, you'd better be playing like Guy Lombardo, or you just weren't playing at all. 20,000 people came to see them one night at the Chicago Armory.
That band had tremendous appeal across all spectrums, and across all age groups, too. It started out as being a band that was the hottest thing around in the 20s for college kids. It's hard to think of Guy Lombardo, actually, as being, you know, the band that 19 and 20-year-olds wanted to hear more than any other, but that was the audience that grew up with it.
One of their biggest fans was Louis Armstrong. That always surprises people, but Armstrong liked the Lombardo's way with the melody. And in the 1920s, the brothers had stood up for him in a way that Armstrong never forgot.
They were in Chicago. They wouldn't let blacks go in, and Louis Armstrong came to see them. They had seen him the night before, and Louis Armstrong came to see him, and they wouldn't let him in. So Liebert goes over to the manager. He says, either he comes in or I go. I can't speak for my brothers, but I'll go. And they said they'd go too, so they had to let him in.
Guy Lombardo and his brothers were stars and could have had whatever they wanted. But what they wanted was to have more of their family share in their success. Their sister, Rose Marie, brother-in-law Kenny Gardner, and young brother Victor, and then 40 years later, godson Joe Van Blurk, were all invited to join the band.
As a child, I was actually really interested in the music, and we had all the records, and I would play them over and over and over, and I would actually imitate Guy leading the band when I was little. But then later on, I got the job in the band, and of course I knew most of the songs because I had listened to the records when I was young, so I knew the whole routine.
And when New York was the place to be, when it really was the entertainment capital of the world, Guy Lombardo and the Royal Canadians